before we kick things off here. But we're going to be breaking down my article that I wrote for the Minocqua Brewing Company Substack, which, if you didn't get a chance to read it, was about Democrats no longer playing defense. And what's ironic about that is I wrote that before knowing the news that was going to break. That, to be perfectly frank, I think every single progressive uh, in America should be pretty devastated about the news that is breaking in Maine from a number of different perspectives. And I reached out to my insiders. I don't have I. There's a lot of gut shot speculation as to whether or not the campaign is going to continue, and the answer to that is probably exactly what you think it is. But nobody knows for certain exactly how things are going to play out. So when I wrote the article, I was writing it from a corruption standpoint, from an economic standpoint, from the perspective of being an individual who, and by the way, I see there's a couple more people liking the post online. Feel free to hop on board if you're a paid subscriber. Leave some comments as I'm doing this here, because just like my normal show, I do love the interaction. So if anybody has any thoughts they want to share about the state of politics, specifically progressive politics, on this July 7th, feel free to leave a comment in the chat here. That's part of one of the perks of being a paid subscriber. Um, so when I was talking about it, I was talking about the over $2 billion worth of fraud committed by Donald Trump, the almost $4 billion worth of fraud committed by the Trump family, and the fact that it could be $10 billion worth of fraud coming from Donald Trump and his cohorts. And I'm here to tell you right now that he would not lose a single diehard MAGA. And that sucks. That's a frustrating reality to contend with. There is no amount of what I refer to as shitbaggery that would ultimately result in him losing votes, him losing supports, him losing any interest from his supporters based on his corruption. And these are the same people that do not shut up about Hillary Clinton's emails. These are the same people that do not shut up about Hunter Biden's laptop. But for one reason or another, they seem very fit to completely make a years-long story out of corruption and fraud from Democrats, while saying that it's all fake news and media hit job. Um, and a media hit job. Hold on one second here. Kirk's texting me. I just want to make sure I'm in the right place, because it seems like we're struggling here a little bit. But so they'll tell you it's a media hit job. They're going to tell you that this is the fault of CNN, MSNBC, and even Fox News, depending on how lost the particular person that you're talking to is. And that's frustrating. I get it. Here's the thing. I think that the Democrats need to embrace this, and rather than lean into the corruption, because I already know where this is going, it's going to result in a handful of Democrats talking about this nonstop during the Trump years. And then inevitably, if you didn't read my article, a Democrat is going to engage in some form of corruption, and it's going to be the story. And every single blowhard and every single a politician should be held to a higher standard is going to be in your face, saying if it was good enough for Trump, it should be good enough for this person, man or woman, whomever. And you'll be sitting there saying, well, the Trump administration did $3 billion worth of fraud, whereas this person did $2 million worth of fraud. Have you met MAGA? Have you ever met MAGA? It does not matter. And so, politically speaking, and I know this is frustrating, Politically speaking, I believe that we are in a post-corruption America. Politically speaking, you are not going to cost Donald Trump a single voter by highlighting the fact that he is obviously fleecing the people that supported him for the better part of the last decade. You will not see his vote totals go down. But what will happen is when a Democrat inevitably engages in fraud, they will pretend like they were always Susie or Stevie straight laced, telling you, hey, this corruption is unacceptable, right? I mean, you got to do something about this person. Rather than lean into the hypocrisy, I say get out in front of it right now. I say stop highlighting the fraud and propose legislation. That's always what I come down to. Stop highlighting it. You're not going to be able to convince people that it makes sense or that it's a good idea to hold Donald Trump to account for the fact that he is actively robbing them. I'm going to tell you right now, if you are a paid subscriber to the Minocqua Brewing Times/company, you have not been fleeced by Donald Trump, at least not directly, like in the ways that Doge, which just disbanded as I was getting live here today, in the ways that Doge has cut back on the Consumer Financial Protections Bureau and the National Labor Relations Board, the money going to Argentina. Yeah, the list goes on and on. He's fleecing you from a tax dollar perspective, but again, to be frank, I'm used to it at this point, and not just from Donald Trump. But in terms of the golden shoes, the stupid phones that never shipped, the the plastic straws, and now the Trump meme coin, there is a 0% chance that you are listening to this office hours and also got conned by Donald Trump. So here's what I say. If the MAGA morons want to be morons, let them be morons. Not your concern. I honestly kind of took that attitude with vaccines. I'm over it at this point. You want to die from an easily preventable disease? More power to you. Don't stick the needle in your arm. And when you get sick and you're blaming an act of God, I'm going to be sitting there to remind you, like, this could have been incredibly easily avoidable if you just weren't such a moron. But you made your bed, go lie in it. It's kind of my same idea here. I've adopted this policy because of sports betting, where like we are in a cost of living crisis. That's real. But if your intention to get out of the cost of living crisis is to throw $1,000 on the next Packers game, you deserve what you get. And there comes a time when people can't hold your hands anymore, and you just have to be responsible for your own problems. Not to say that you don't listen to the people that are actively going through the strife. But if it's a problem of your own making, if you put, and I've been talking about this story for like 5 days now, and I won't shut the hell up about it. Reuters has a story out. A man put $40,000 into Trump's meme coin. That $40,000 is now worth like $6,200, I believe. And Reuters asked him, do you blame Donald Trump for this? And he said, no, I blame Democrats and hedge funds. Good. Give them another $40,000 in toil and brokenness. And when you realize that you need a social safety net to save you, hopefully at that point, the pendulum has swung the other way and the Democrats have started strengthening that social safety net. There comes a time where you got to cut the cord. There just comes a time when you say, you know what? I've tried. I wanted you to be a part of this, and it doesn't seem as though you are interested. Go with God, or in your words, go with Trump, and good luck to you. Democrats, if they are intending to win the House and then do nothing except talk about Donald Trump's obvious corruption and try and hold him to account, maybe impeach him for it, but obviously not get anywhere because you're going to need a supermajority in the Senate, waste of time. Waste of time because the MAGAs aren't changing their mind. They showed you that in 2024. They do not give a fuck. Just come to grips with that now. They are not going to budge. You're going to waste your time, and you're going to have nothing to be able to point to in terms of actually improving the lives of the people who may vote for you. So there, that's at least the precursor for how I feel about the way things have been going over the course of the last year or so surrounding the Trump administration. These people are still telling you that he doesn't take up his $400,000 salary or whatever it is while he's enriched himself to the tune of $2 billion. They are lost. In fact, I just cut a short from my YouTube channel where who is it? Unusual Whales is reporting the average wealth in Europe is at $337,000. That's less than half of the average wealth in America, which is at 696,000. Essentially as an offering to the MAGAs and the Trump people to let them know just how star-spangled awesome we are relative to Europe. Here's the problem with that. Average doesn't mean shit when you have a trillionaire. What you're going to want is the median, and the median um, wealth level in America is closer to $65,000. We're actually ranked 28th. We are ranked first in terms of average wealth because we have trillionaires. We are ranked 28th in the world in terms of median wealth. The average person, to be frank, when I was still employed, that's right around where I would have been if I didn't have other investments. If I were just working for the salary that I was making, I would have been right in that boat as well. And something tells me a lot of people listening are either in that boat or were in that boat before they retired. They're never going to pivot off of that. All right. So your objective, and by your, I mean Democrats, objective going forward is to win over the disaffected left and the disaffected center. And unfortunately, we took a hell of a blow today. And if you weren't listening to Outside the Box this morning, I would like to reemphasize, because I think it's important for the people that have platforms, that have an ability to talk about this, to talk about it in the right way. He needs to step down. They're going to put a blue MAGA in his place, and that person, whether it's Janet Mills or a dark horse that no one sees coming, is going to lose by 7 to 10 points to Susan Collins. I think the Democratic Party has already announced if Plattner stays in, they're not going to put $1 into the race. I don't care who ends up there. They shouldn't put $1 into the race because Maine is lost, unfortunately. And it sucks because as a result of losing Maine, I kind of feel like the Democrats lost the Senate. And it's a shitty, shitty feeling. Brought about by a guy that the timing is uncomfortable. And I realize that a lot of you are going to listen to this and be like, Ben, what are you talking about? Like they announced this a week before the deadline. This is just like Tara Reid. I'm telling you right now, guys, the evidence is stacked against Plattner in a way that anybody who is looking at objectively. If Donald Trump did this, you would be calling for him to step down. If Rubio or Vance did it, you'd be calling for them to step down. If any Democrat did it, you'd be calling for them to step down. So if you're what I call a bona fide progressive, and you're trying to find a way to justify to yourself that Plattner should stay in the race, I disagree. I'm not saying I'm right, by the way. I had a great caller today on the show bring that up and say, Ben, you're really willing to say that you wouldn't vote for Graham Plattner, even though you know that Susan Collins is going to bring hell on earth to Maine and continue voting with Donald Trump over 90% of the time? Yes. Because the hypocrisy needs to stop. What sucks about all of this is if there weren't progressive voices calling for Plattner to step down, the only people that lose are women. And I'm not trying to be a white knight or some kind of social justice warrior. It is just the reality facing the situation today. Because we all know that if Donald Trump is accused of anything, it's called fake news. They immediately don't believe it, and it's out of the news cycle within 24 hours. When Mamdani was running in New York, Chuck Schumer and Kirsten Gillibrand, who are currently calling for Graham Plattner to step down, were endorsing Andrew Cuomo against Zohran Mamdani, despite the fact that he had 12 counts of sexual harassment against him. So you got the MAGAs and you got the libs all advocating for their candidate despite impropriety towards women, while claiming to be the savior of that population of people, whether it be MAGA talking about transgender people in sports or liberals talking about the Me Too movement. The only people that actually have room to talk about this stuff were progressives, are progressives, as far as I'm concerned, as long as some of the louder voices do the right thing. I saw one of my regular listeners commented on my Facebook page letting me know Bernie has officially joined the chorus of people calling for Blattner to step down. Um, as I said, I reached out to some insiders in Maine, and they said I haven't heard anything official, but I see no way that he stays in. And I don't know if he's going to stay in or not. And what's even crazier is I don't know if he stayed in if he'd lose. And I think that says more about the system than anything. And what that says to me as a dude is if we allowed that to happen as progressives, we are essentially saying we do not give a shit about women. And we know that none of the other parties give a shit about women. And I make this joke. I have a lot of friends back in the city of Pittsburgh, a lot of black friends that I always joke. And I was like, I really value our friendship because I feel like race relations are going in a way that I feel like you guys are just going to pull out of white society soon. And I don't want to live in a non diverse white society. That sounds boring, sounds lame. And I wouldn't blame you for a second if you didn't want to put up with the bullshit anymore. And I kind of feel the same way about women. Now, women and men have to keep interacting for the species to continue to exist. So I don't think it could ever go straight balkanization. But like, I would understand as younger and younger women begin to enter adulthood, and this is the only version of politics that they see, not wanting shit to do with anybody. And what sucks about that is it feels so avoidable, and I think it's the Progressive Party that needs to lead the charge on it. Like I said in the article, stop playing on the defensive. And in order to stop playing on the defensive, when this shit happens, you got to cut ties. And you never forget, every single one of you, when your liberal friends are telling you, you throw Andrew Cuomo in their face, you throw Anthony Weiner in their face, no pun intended. You throw the obvious sex pests that the Democrats have allowed to exist in the party back in their face and say, no, you do not have the high ground here. Highlighting that Donald Trump is a piece of crap while still advocating for these people does not make you better or somehow superior to MAGA. You're just a cult of a different color. But as much as it sucks, I think the progressive flank needs to cut ties and needs to get on the offensive. The main race is lost, as far as I'm concerned. What needs to happen going forward is a recognition that the politics that Graham Plattner espoused were popular. If the Democratic Party weren't bending over backwards to sink his campaign every week because he had the balls to say, I will not allow for weapons to continue to be sent to Israel, and most of our Democratic counterparts still want to see that happen, if he didn't have to contend with that, he'd be a 10-point favorite in every poll in Maine right now based on his politics. Have you guys seen these memes going around where Fox News is like, this person's a DSA candidate. Look at what the DSA stands for. And it basically stops short of like free puppies for everybody in America. Like it's all the best shit you could imagine and paying for it through all of the obvious means that you would take to pay for something. That's what they would be doing for Plattner. They'd be trying to scare you with like, he thinks you shouldn't go broke because your health care. He fought in wars and he thinks that pointless wars for no reason other than oil are stupid wars. As if any of that is a bad idea. The Republicans and Fox News, even though they won't admit it, are terrified that progressives are finally taking over the Democratic Party because Democrats are easy to beat. Progressives are not, unless you have an uneducated population. If you have people paying attention, it's not going to be easy to beat a bona fide progressive. An anti-data center, anti-flock, anti-AI progressive. A Medicare for all progressive. A treat women with respect progressive. I don't believe that that is a difficult platform to win with. And Graham Plattner was showing us that. Mamdani shows us that. Francesca Hong shows us that. Al Sayed shows us that. Ramen in LA shows us that. Kiros in Colorado shows us that. These people are winning more and more. And by these people, of course, I mean progressives and socialists. I don't mean because, ironically enough, other than Plattner, they are all people of color. And as much as it pains me to say it, because if you know me at all, you know I have no respect for identity politics. I think that Plattner was going to make a lot of strides winning over the young white boy vote, and that's a vote that the Democratic Party desperately needs to figure out how to win. Not to toot my own horn, but I'm kind of like the epitome of masculinity in the American left right now, and I'm not particularly masculine. Um, but there's an issue there that young men are struggling to cling to that I think somebody with Plattner's physique, with his resume, with his demeanor, could pull people out of the YouTube sphere, the manosphere, as people often call it, and show people that being empathetic and being a real person and being a human being is actually a plausible strategy for somebody. It's a reasonable way to live. And I do see snippets as I become more perennially online. I start to see snippets of young people who have their own streams, who will play right wing manosphere grifters. And they'll be like, honestly, I don't know how anybody actually falls for this. And this is 15 and 16-year-olds. And whether or not they're little drops in the bucket or they're a greater trend of people realizing that the grifting is obvious and kind of embarrassing. It does give me hope. Very famously, there is an episode of South Park early on in the show's run where Pokemon is all the rage. I think they call it Chim Pokemon in South Park. And the parents do everything they can to get their kids to stop being addicted to these toys. And they realize at the end of the episode that the way to get young people to stop liking anything is for the parents to like it. And once the parents like it, it's no longer cool and the kids move on. You recognize no one does 6-7 anymore? It's because all the old people like me have started doing 6-7. And so all the 15-year-olds are like, okay, now we need a new lingo because this is played out at this point. I'm hoping that, and hell, I even used to put it in real world. I think superhero movies are going to go the same way. I love the Marvel movies. It's a weak point of mine. But I think there's enough 15 and 16-year-olds seeing enough 30 and 40-year-olds be super into Marvel and DC. And they're like, okay, well, that's old people stuff. I'm going to go find the thing the 15-year-olds like. And that's what's ultimately going to usher the superhero movie phenomenon out of the limelight entirely. I have a feeling that the same thing is happening with the grifter sphere right now. That young people are seeing their parents, their older siblings, all of the older generations in society very obviously falling for a con man, and they are not going to be susceptible to it. The problem is, and you can look at any fallen empire to see how this plays out, if you leave a vacuum in those moments, anybody can step in. And normally, in a power vacuum, who steps in is the shittiest person, unless there's already levers in place. Like, God forbid, if the Constitution in America collapsed and we had to remake ourselves as something else, it wouldn't be the empaths who ended up taking control. You know what I mean? We got to do it through the levers of power that already exist. And so I say that little tangent there to say that Plattner to me represented a possible path forward for younger people to kind of cling to of what it means to be a progressive. And by people, I mean white people, because people of all marginalized communities are whooping ass in that regard already, and white people are a little slow on the uptick. Hell, if you met my grandparents, you would know that, much like my friend and cohort Patty Vasquez, I'm just passing white. If you met my family, you'd realize, oh, I didn't realize Greeks are only like half human. They're like these little chimpanzee things. I had no idea. It would stick out if you met my extended family. Um, Graham Plattner's a white boy, right? And unfortunately, He's got to go, and I don't know if he's going to, and that opens an entirely new slew of problems because, if he stays in, I doubt he wins. He could win. We got a, you know, I don't wanna say the word, an SAer in the White House right now. So the idea that one couldn't win for Senate is possible. But, like, if you haven't read the Politico article yet and you're defending him, take it from somebody whose two-time Super Bowl winning quarterback was accused of sexual assault 2 times over. It's easy to stay blinded when you support somebody as much as Graham Plattner's supported him. But read the article. These stories go back to 2019, and not the stories, the interactions with other people corroborating the stories go back to 2019. Like people saying in 2019, here's the correspondence of her talking to me about it. And he was an oyster fisherman at that point. He had no aspirations, or at least no public aspirations, of doing what he needed to do. Here's what sucks, though. The Democratic Party needs to play offense. That's the theme of this show today. And they could read the goddamn tea leaves. They could see that 4 out of 5 Democrats do not want money or weapons going to Israel. They can see that Medicare for all is popular. They can see that taxing the rich is popular. They can see that progressive politics in general are popular. And they are going to put someone in his place because the Democratic Party gets to choose. They're going to Kamala Harris this situation and just force Janet Mills or some other centrist to the top of the ticket and be like, well, do you want MAGA to win or do you want to do something about ICE? And then lose. Or you could play offense. You could read the tea leaves and go grab a dark horse. Grab someone with next to no name recognition that you know actually believes what Graham Plattner was saying, where he built an entire tens of thousands of volunteers army and go win the freaking election. But I don't think they're going to do that. And I hope I'm wrong. I have MSNBC on as I'm talking to you, and they have dedicated the entire half hour that I am talking to you about the same issue. And I promise you, they are not coming at this with the same nuance that I am. They're not talking to you about Cuomo and Weiner and who I think was wrongfully removed from office, Al Franken. They're not going to talk to you about that. They're just going to tell you that this progressive has to go because the mainstream media hates progressives, because we highlight to them all the things that they wish they are, but we know they're not. The Democrats can still win this race. The candidate they put up to replace Plattner will let you know if they actually are interested or not. Thanks for joining, old guy. We're just about to wrap up for the day, but I appreciate you being here. There comes a time when we have to acknowledge the writing on the wall. And the writing on the wall says the last 24 hours for Plattner are not popular. The Totenkopf situation, which I had a caller today think that he knew what he was doing. I personally don't buy that. But that wasn't his best moment. But the policies, the attitude, the ideas that brought working class people together across the spectrum, those are popular. 10% of Trump voters voted for Mamdani in New York. The Democrats can still win this election if they're willing to play offense. This is a very different podcast than the one that I was intending to do surrounding corruption and the ideas that I had there. But given the nature, and I do my show in a breaking news way, so I I figured this would be the best path to kind of jump into this because I think there's a lot of people talking about Plattner in bad faith, and I think there's other people defending him in a way that, while I understand it, I think would not be a good look for progressive politics long term. They have Janet Mills, Troy Jackson, Hannah Pingree, Narev Shah, Dan Kleben, and Shannon Bellows as possible replacements if he were to drop out. I might have to look into each one of them, and I'll probably do a rundown of each one of them for tomorrow's program about if any of them are actually reflective of Plattner's politics in any way. I actually want to take a picture of this just so I have the names. Um, There we go. Yeah, you guys are catching. This is kind of how it works now that I'm a little more independent operating here. But I'm going to look into them and I'll have it on Outside the Box tomorrow morning, 9 to 11. And we'll see if any of these people. No, okay, I thought I misread it. I thought he just announced that he pulled out. And I'll have a rundown about these. I already tell you Janet Mills is a waste of time and is going to lose by 10 points if that's the candidate that ultimately ends up coming out after Plattner, in my opinion, inevitably drops out. But we'll see. We'll see, and then we'll determine if the Democrats are serious about it. You guys have seen the memes, or at least maybe you have. Maybe my algorithm might be a bit different than some of yours, but it's like the little tiny puppy, and it's like Democrats when they're trying to push back against Trump policies, and then it becomes the super jacked dog, and it's like Democrats when they're trying to stop progressives from winning elections. And I do think this call came from inside the House. I think this was a Democratic hit job, and I think it's an accurate one, but it was a hit job nevertheless. Um, I don't know if I buy into the concept of automatically believing all women, but I definitely buy into the concept of listening to all women. And I listened to what she had to say, and I'm pretty thoroughly convinced that I know what I'm looking at here, and it sucks. It sucks so much, but it's the situation we're in. Pick ourselves up and move forward. A lot of progressives out there still, including in this great state with Francesca Hong. Just went to an event of hers on Sunday. She actually shouted out Outside the Box while she was doing her speech, which was pretty freaking cool. Got Abdul El Sayed in Michigan. We got a lot of elections here still to be excited about. It just sucks because it really does feel like that was the final straw that kind of lost the Democrats the Senate in November. Go out and vote, obviously, but I'm just a realist, almost to a fault. So we'll see what ends up happening there. But unfortunately, that's where we're going to have to do it for today's edition of Office Hours. Smaller audience here today, but we're going to make it available for all paid subscribers to check out whenever they get time. So hopefully some more people check this out. And you can catch me 9 to 11 on the Minocqua Brewing Company Substack every single day. I also have my own Ben Cominos pages, which I'm trying to build my own independent career. So obviously listen on the Minocqua stuff, but if you could give me some follows, they're free. It just helps me do my thing. I got to get to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube in order to monetize it. So any and all appreciation would be supported there. And I do my own thing that isn't on Minocqua at 7 to 8 called Ben After Dark. A little bit of politics and mostly just bullshitting. And I kind of chat it up with everybody involved. So if you like the kind of content that I do, you can definitely get your fill of me 5 days a week, once for the office hours, and then 4 evenings a week as well. I appreciate everybody who took the time to listen this far into the podcast. I'm going to get out of here. I still haven't eaten lunch yet today, so this feels like a good a time as any to go and find something to eat. And I'll be talking to y'all later tonight or tomorrow morning. Looking forward to it. Take it easy, everybody.